Welcome to the Fight for Resistance podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Fox, and today my guest, she resides in Spokane, Washington. She's Yurok, an enrolled member of the Otter tribe, Otter clan, and her name is Donell Barlow. How you doing, Donell?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
All right. How's the weather up there in Spokane?
It's quite nice. I think the high today is like mid 80s.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, it's pretty hot over here in Arizona. Really hot. So hopefully they said it's gonna get cooler by Halloween, which is like another 2 months. Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to go over. We met on social media and things like that. And one of the things I saw on your on the YouTube was your food for medicine presentation, which was really interesting. So is that something that you focus on a lot, or is there other things you do besides? I know you do a lot of other stuff, like you're author. You have like 3 or 4 books out right now.
Yeah, I have 4 books, working on a 5th right currently as well.
Yeah. Okay, and then you do your nutrition consultant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do a lot here.
I do. I wear a lot of hats because I'm just passionate about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I also think they kind of relate to one another in different ways. They support one another.
Yeah.
So, and it's just fun. It's fun to not have, a standard schedule necessarily. Sometimes it's very stressful.
Yeah, I bet.
But I wouldn't trade it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I always talk about when we go to ceremonies, we have foods there. A lot of the food comes from government issued food a long time ago, like commodity food. So you get, you get lard and you get flour, you get beans. And so that kind of turns into traditional food, but it's not really. So a lot of times we have, I have a friend of mine named Robert that comes and tries to change our diet. And we're, a lot of us natives are pretty stubborn about the way we eat. Is that something that you deal with when you deal with this food for medicine?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, if I'm going to work with a client, there has to be some type of agreement,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like anything else, we have an addiction to food, right? And
Right.
especially specific things like sugar, caffeine, salt. So if someone's not ready to make that transition, it's not going to work very well. And nobody likes to be forced.
Yeah.
And that doesn't stick, right? And so you kind of have to look at it as like an addiction in a way. You're changing a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you want to go about it in a good way. And so there's definitely steps that happen before that. And usually, typically, I mean, people are coming to me, so they're at a point where they're dealing with some type of ailment or symptom that Western medicine has not been able to assist them or support them in a way that feels good for them. And so they're ready to try something different, which takes time and patience and consistency.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of dietary too is being diabetic. Because I have family members that are diabetic, and it's hard to change your diet and what you're eating. And then when you go to ceremonies, there's not really much diabetic food there. You know what I mean?
It's very true. Very, very true. So it's like it's really disappointing for me when I go to specific events, ceremonies and things where they're just, we're promoting the colonized food, and the food that's making us sick. And sometimes it can be a lack of resources. And I understand that, some communities might have a lack of resources as far as those foods go. So that can be a part of it as well. And also, of course, there's cost, right? Because cheap food is, poor nutrition.
Yeah.
So that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
By any means, right?
Right.
So, there's that connection too. But if anywhere we were to have that experience of traditional foods, the ceremonies would be the time that it's needed most.
Yeah, because even like the elders kind of know, like my mom, she don't talk too much about, what she used to eat, but sometimes she'll come up and tell me, oh, we used to eat this in the desert, like, man, you didn't tell me that before, like she just they used to do it, but they got so used to, I think, like in where I'm from in St. Carlos, they had a commodity food, and they just you just stand in line and give it out to you, and so a lot of people would stand in line and get most of their food from there.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why this food sovereignty movement is I feel like one of the positive things we can take from COVID, because there's been a lot of movement. There's been a lot of programs that are offering assistance in communities. If you apply for different federal grant programs, there is support out there and resources that weren't there prior. I feel like since COVID, and communities really coming together and realizing how essential food sovereignty is. And so I'm seeing so much more of that now than ever before, where we're trying to make that happen. Which is really going to be the game changer, right? Is creating that food sovereignty within our communities. And if you're urban native as well, there's also ways to go about that too.
Yeah, there seems like a lot of I know here there's a lot of people that kind of went back when COVID hit, that they were trying to go like, someone were boiling sage and, drinking certain kind of teas, like just natural stuff, trying to, so I know people resorted back to that when COVID came up.
Almost definitely. I mean, and it was unfortunate though, because a lot of that sharing, depending on what kind of network platform you were sharing it on, was taken down. I saw that often,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of stigmas with that clash between Western medicine and then our, indigenous practices in medicine. So I did see, some of that back and forth where they were trying, you know what I mean? Where they're trying to discredit the medicine that was our first medicine.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes. Yeah, because a lot of times the pandemic, we had influenza, that hit the Native Americans, and I mean a lot of thyroid pandemic hit us in the 1930s in California. So, any kind of sickness, we always seem to get hit hard on that.
Well, and it really it comes down to prevention. That's the key. And that's what our ancestors did. They had a balanced diet. And they utilized every part of the animal, every part of the plant. And it was in harmony with Mother Nature. So that was all preventive medicine. And we tend to now wait until something's wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
To do something, to change something. Right.
Right.
So I think that's a big shift that would need to change, is thinking about the preventive part before we get to that point.
You think the Native Americans, our health, like, you think it's caught up to today's food, or we're still kind of, you think that's why we have a lot of issues health wise, because we're eating this food that's, that doesn't come naturally, like what we used to have?
I think that we're more predisposed to certain symptoms, certain, I don't like using the word like diseases or anything, but just certain ailments, because it's not in our genetics. And so that just makes it makes it harder for us to digest certain things, to break them down. I mean, I'm more sensitive to dairy and caffeine. And I think that definitely, and sugar. And I think that most definitely relates. And I see it with a lot of indigenous people that I work with, to that ancestral lineage. Those weren't things that we had or used in our diets at all. So it would make sense that we would have more sensitivities to them as well, and how they break down in the body. I mean, people tend to forget even alcohol. Alcohol breaks down into sugar.
Yes.
Essentially. So, that being something that maybe we have a more difficult time processing, it makes sense to me, because it breaks down to sugar. So, yeah, I definitely see a correlation between the numbers that we see, but also it's lack of still having a lack of resources.
Yeah. It does seem like a lot of people that I know are lactose. A lot of my cousins or family, they're lactose. So
they're very lactose. And if we really want to get into it, I mean, essentially, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I'm not saying anything against dairy,
Mm-hmm.
but for us to drink and the milk of another animal is quite strange.
Yeah.
But if we were going to do it, we should be going with the more nutritious option. Goat milk is a lot more nutritious than cow's milk.
Yeah.
And then even reindeer milk. So the indigenous folks that herd reindeer, that's actually the most nutritious milk that you can drink.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And it sustains their people. To me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's also about the practices around that industry that I have an issue with. You know what I mean? Because we know as indigenous folks that there's an energy into everything that we do and how it's cultivated and processed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the way that our dairy cows are kept pregnant and pumped full of antibiotics and different
Yeah.
things like that, all of that energy is transferred onto us.
Yeah.
So there's a way to go about it in a sustainable way that's going to benefit, I think, people, and also, not be difficult for the animals, that they're living some quality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because I mean, like, I know in St. Carlos, like, we'll have, deer meat, elk meat, and things like
mm-hmm.
that it has a really good taste to it. You could tell the difference, but not a lot of tribes
and
do that.
yeah, it is because they were eating their natural diet too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And yeah, that's not the case with our factory farming.
Yeah,
but definitely. That's what's affordable.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
So it's all of those systems, right? It's how all of those systems connect.
Yeah. It just seems like, like for me as an American, and to my kids, I always tell them, like, we might be diabetic when we get older. I think that's everybody's in the back of their mind as natives, like,
mm-hmm.
we have to, take care of our health or we're going to be diabetic, and so just things like that we have to deal with, it seems like every day about what we're eating.
Yeah, and it's not even just about what we're eating. I've really gone down a big rabbit hole the last few years about some different ways that we ignite disease that
mm-hmm.
aren't just related to diet. And so what they're starting to find out through, through the research of epigenetics is that it's what ignites some of those causes of diseases or different things in the body. It's
mm-hmm.
not necessarily all hereditary.
Yeah.
It's how we pass on those relationships. So how we pass on our relationship to food, how we teach our children how to manage stress
mm-hmm.
by the way that we manage our stress.
Yeah.
And so those are the things
okay.
that actually ignite inflammation in the body, which I find really interesting, but also really empowering.
Yes.
Because that means we can do something about it. Right.
Right. Definitely.
When we understand that, and, and that work is done on a spiritual, emotional, mental level,
mm-hmm.
So the food is just one part of that. And it's an important part. But from working with folks, I and even myself included, that stress management part is so critical.
Yes. Yeah, because even ceremonies can be stressful, like,
mm-hmm.
your supplies and what you need and, who's coming and the food. It is stressful. I mean, my daughter had a dance, a coming of age ceremony, and it was stressful getting everything together, and so knowing that, I could see why.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it is, because you want everything to be, a
mm-hmm.
certain way and to go a certain way and make sure everything's taken care of. But we always have to go back and remind ourselves, and I'm guilty of this completely, that we're putting that energy into that process, right?
Right. That's true.
And so that's all contributing to the main event, to the outcome. And I most definitely have to check myself on that.
Yeah.
All the time, that's an ongoing process. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Like, I don't want to be putting that energy into there,
Yeah.
But it's so natural for us to stress. Like, that's really not a tool we're taught very well, is how to manage our stress.
Oh, okay.
And
then we're stressed, when we're stressed, we want to eat, and, because food does make my stress go away sometimes. So
yeah, and that's what it is, right? So
right.
What we're taught is coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
That's what we're taught. So we eat, use substance abuse, we
Mm-hmm.
use erratic behavior, we use other addictive types of coping mechanisms to deal with stress or distract. We
Okay.
distract, even
Yeah.
something as simple as that, instead of, actually dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're taught, I feel like, in today's society.
Yeah,
Um,
that is true. I didn't think about that.
hmm
Hmm.
I do a talk just on managing stress
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
because, I mean, they say it's the silent killer for a reason.
Yes, definitely.
So, there are healthy individuals that do everything right and then have a brain aneurysm or a heart attack, even. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I always wonder in the back of my mind, was there something going on where stress was not being properly managed?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's some that's the opposite. They're like stress free, and then they don't eat too well. So.
You're right. I
Hmm.
mean, and some of the happiest people in the world, right, have very little,
Yeah.
but they know how to not be stressed, but they're not stressed out,
Yeah. Okay.
you know, which
Um.
is really interesting.
So you do
But
the
yeah,
food for medicine, and you also do stress.
I
Uh,
do lots of different talks. I do, yeah,
ah.
because the health coaching is the food is a part of the health coaching,
Mm-hmm.
but it's mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of different things within that health coaching lens. So it just depends on what a particular person wants to work on, or if I'm, work doing I do a lot of contract work for federal grant programs
Yeah.
too. So, I mean, it just depends on what we're looking at,
Yeah.
and then a different direction to go with it. And like self care is also a big subject I talk a
Yeah.
lot about. And I call it rituals of self care. And I incorporate, some indigenous practices and different ways that we're able to express ourselves
Yeah.
through creative expression, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Or being in nature or dream medicine, or there's just lots of different things
Mm-hmm.
that are so important when it comes to self care, because that's also something that we pass on to our kids,
Yeah.
is
Mm-hmm.
how we take care of ourselves. So, but that's another aspect, right, of that mind, body, spirit,
Yeah.
uh,
Definitely.
right? Because it's
Right.
it's all about being in balance.
Yes.
So we just have to look at all the different core things that we want to keep in balance so that
Mm-hmm.
we can, stay, you know,
Yeah.
basically in that space,
What
because it doesn't work to just go one direction or
what
the other.
what age group
So
do you kind of hit this on your topics, like your classes or what you're teaching? What kind of
it
age
totally
group?
depends, because I also do talks just for teenagers
Okay.
too. I've done things around early prevention of marijuana use. I've done that for kids,
Okay.
for the state of Washington,
Yeah.
and also adults who work with teens.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but a lot of my talks, I would say most of the food and medicine talks are for adults. But I am employed again this year for our public school system here in Spokane as a Native American educator.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been going into the high schools. I just got back into the high schools again this last year since
Yeah.
COVID, and working with teenagers.
Oh wow! And
Um,
who's
yeah.
better students? You think, like the teenagers, or the, like the older age? Because
Mm,
like my father, or some of my family, like if I try to tell him like, hey dad, you can't be eating this, he'll he's pretty stubborn. He eats something, he'll eat it. He won't really, he'll eat what he's used to, and not, so I mean I see a lot of
yeah.
like that.
I think, well, this is kind of where it changed. There's pros and cons to both.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for the most part, young people don't get to necessarily choose.
Yeah.
Someone else is choosing for them, right?
Right.
So they can only choose so much of what they're eating when someone else is paying the grocery bill.
Yes.
But they're more open, I feel like, especially if they're dealing with symptoms or ailments that are really hindering,
Mm-hmm.
their athletic performance or their school performance or
Yeah.
something, then they're more willing to change. But as we get older, we get real set in our ways,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd rather just complain and take over the counter medication. And I don't call it medicine. For me, there's a very big difference between medicine and medication.
Yeah.
And we'd rather just keep, in that vicious cycle.
Yeah.
I think that it's harder to work with adults. Well, like, the older you get, I think it's harder.
Yeah.
Personally, been harder to work with elders just because, they're more set in their ways.
Yes.
As far as that goes. But, one of the beautiful things that I figured out was if I can work with the young people, then who work with their elders,
yes,
that's when that shift will happen.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, my grandkid, not my child, because usually they don't want to hear it from you. But like if your grandkids are making you healthier things or introducing some of that stuff in, you're going to be more apt to like try it and participate in it than if your own child is bossing you around or I'm, an outsider telling you. So
well, I think that's good because, I mean, when I was in high school, I played, 3 sports in high school, 4 years, and I don't remember eating healthy. You know what I mean? I don't remember eating as I should be. I don't remember working out like I should have. But that's good to get that involved in high school because a lot of times we don't eat that well.
We don't. I mean, I grew up on processed food. I was raised by my single dad, so I felt terrible,
Yeah.
And they diagnosed me with irritable bowel syndrome when I was like 16 or something. And I was living off of drinking Pepto-Bismol, before my basketball games. And my stomach hurt all the time, and I went to specific specialists, gastrologists, in fact.
Yeah.
And they never asked me what I was eating.
Wow.
And I hear that all the time. And it's because Western medicine compartmentalizes the body. We treat specific body parts for symptoms. And Eastern medicine and indigenous medicine, we look at the root cause. We try to figure out what's going on with other, in the body as a whole.
Yeah.
And specifically for me, I really look at the gut because it's 70% of our immune system, at least. It might even be more than that. And so that's how we get to the root of actually what's happening and not just treating the symptoms.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And where we go wrong so often, because all inflammation, even inflammation that contributes to Alzheimer's and dementia, it all begins in the gut.
Okay.
So we should always be asking what we're eating, no matter who we're going to go see for whatever problem it is. If you have issues with arthritis, I would definitely ask you what you were eating. Because there could be a definite correlation between sugar causing inflammation in your body and contributing to that arthrites.
So you think you're saying even dementia, it could have been contributing to the food that we're eating.
So dementia is so basically what happens is when we're eating foods that aren't working with our body and we're ignoring the symptoms, because usually the symptoms start off pretty mild, and we're ignoring the symptoms and we're not allowing the intestinal lining to repair itself, which it repairs itself, I think, about every 7 days.
Okay.
But we get these little holes in our intestinal lining, and then undigested food, bacteria, inflammation leaks out, and it travels to weak parts in the body.
Yeah.
And for some people, where it goes is the brain.
Okay.
And so that's where we're seeing what they call type 3. They call it type 3 diabetes.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah. And it is interesting, right?
Right.
And so truly what we eat not just only affects our physical self, but it affects our mental. I mean, you see it with kids and how they might not perform very well in school when they eat a sugar-loaded breakfast and they're falling asleep.
Yes.
In class, right?
Right.
Or they're super sensitive and they're hyperactive, and they're showing signs of ADHD, which is very much overdiagnosed in this country.
Yeah.
Where I think oftentimes it's diet or the child might need a different learning style,
Yeah.
and that learning style of sitting in a desk for however many hours a day
Mm-hmm.
is just not beneficial for that child.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And over time, that inflammation is it contributes to those things that we're seeing with Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating, but our gut actually, so our gut develops, it has its own brain, and it
Mm-hmm.
has its own central nervous system.
Yeah.
So it sends those chemical messages from the food you're eating to your brain. And that's what we continue to ignore.
Yeah.
And that develops in the womb before our actual brain does.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
so if we don't get, full development of the gut, you'll often see other things happen with development of our brain before we're born as well. There's connections there as well.
It
And
seems.
how that there's such a beautiful, strong connection between our gut and our brain that we
Yeah.
just don't acknowledge.
It seems like like your great grandfathers, they passed away from bronchitis, pneumonia,
Mm-hmm.
the flu, and then the next generation was passing away from cancer because a lot of Native Americans worked in mines and things
Yeah,
like that, and then where they
definitely.
lived
Yeah.
was polluted from mines, and then now. In this generation, it seems like it's more of a health issue. If Native Americans pass away, they're diabetic or high blood pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. It just seems like things change as generation goes on.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. Definitely those environmental factors
Hmm.
played a huge part
Yeah.
in that cancer that we're seeing. But now, yeah, I mean, we still see a lot of diabetes and heart disease.
Yeah.
Heart disease is another big one. Like you said, high blood pressure. Um, but I also relate a lot of that work again back to epigenetics and historical trauma,
Yeah.
because we pass that down through our genetics even when it's not a first
Hmm.
person experience, that trauma. We know that, right?
Yeah.
It's passed down. And so if that ancestral healing continues to not be done, and that work continues to not be done, it most definitely can manifest
Yeah.
as a physical symptom in generations to come.
Okay. I can.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I think. What do you think about fasting? Because I always hear like Native Americans a long time ago we fast a lot, and we didn't eat as much during certain years, so we fast and,
Yeah.
and things like that. Is that something that we should be doing or going back to, or just
Um,
depends on how
I
we?
think I do fasting, but it's definitely for purpose and intention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that it really depends on the situation, the person's health,
Yeah.
pre-existing health, what they're doing it for, how long they're doing it for, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And depending on it, are they going to be supervised by anybody?
Yeah.
I think that fasting is a beautiful way to allow the digestive system a break.
Mm-hmm.
And because it takes a lot of energy to digest your food, that's often why we get very tired
Yeah.
when we digest food, because it takes a lot of energy to break it down.
Yeah.
So when you're not, it gives your body and also gives your body an opportunity to push toxins out. It's oftentimes why you get really cranky or sleepy,
Yeah.
low energy when you're fasting, at least in the beginning, you know what I
Okay.
mean? But then
Yeah.
if it goes on for a few more days, that energy comes back. Um, but I think it's very beneficial, especially, I mean, I fast often when I prepare for Sweat Lodge
Yeah.
personally, or I do plant dieting, or I fast off of food, but then I just eat one specific plant medicine
Mm-hmm.
in a tea form and in other forms that I take it,
Mm-hmm.
just so I can connect with that specific plant in a more intimate way.
Yeah.
And then there's intermittent fasting, which I do think is pretty beneficial, but most people probably couldn't do the standard. So intermittent fasting is, when you eat between certain hours, and
Okay.
typically they'll say your 8 hours a day you can eat, and then for those other 16 hours you don't eat. So you have a block of time.
Yeah.
It's not about counting calories or any of that. It's just you have a block of time. And for me personally, that's a difficult schedule,
Yeah.
especially with having a young child.
Yeah.
So I like I'll do like instead of doing it that extreme, I'll do 10, 10 and 14 or 12 and 12.
Okay.
And I do feel good when I do that.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it can get dangerous when you go for prolonged periods of time. If
Mm-hmm.
you're somebody who might have some health,
Yeah.
ailments, you definitely should be consulting, some
Yeah.
medical professionals. You should be having, you know what I mean, some
Yeah.
support around you to make sure you're doing it in a safe way. I think it can very much go too extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that you need to be, do your research and be smart
I
about how
you
you're going about it.
you mentioned earlier, but yeah, that's the only time I've heard about fasting is when for ceremonies. You know, the dancers
Hmm.
would fast for 4 days before a ceremony. So that's the only time I
Yeah.
really have heard of it. You know, and then like on my Pomo side, they used to not eat any meat or any meat cooked in grease. You know, they couldn't eat
Hmm.
anything. They had to eat everything that had to be baked or soup or stuff like that. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's the only time
Well,
I heard of
yeah,
fasting.
intermittent fasting right now is a new health craze.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty popular. So that's something you probably see around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I just really fully think that not everything works for everybody, and we weren't designed to all
Yeah.
eat the same and be on the same schedule. And
Yes.
I think that we need to treat it as individuals and that we have different needs at different times,
Yeah.
depending on stress, hormones, age,
Mm-hmm.
and and what your ancestry is. So, and your internal environment and your external environment. So I think that it changes,
Yeah, and that's why I
you
was
know.
asking, like, you think we adapt? Because, like, I know, on my Pomo side, well, a long time ago, they had, people was there asking, our relatives about words for, certain things, and one of the speakers asked one of the elders, how do you say breakfast? And he said the word, and he said lunch, and he said the same word, and he said dinner,
Hmm.
and he said the same word. So we never had like breakfast, lunch, dinner. He was just saying the
No,
same thing, over and over. There was no word for those.
no. And the word breakfast comes from breaking your fast.
Yeah.
So you're right. So
Right.
we didn't eat all night.
Okay.
Nobody ate all night. That's why they called it breakfast. But you're right.
Yeah.
Like, no, we didn't eat specific times of the day,
Yeah.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was intuitively,
Mm-hmm.
well, for one, you ate when you had the resources, right? But
Right.
also you ate when you were hungry,
Yeah.
when it was time to eat with your family, with your community.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't set. Then this, that whole schedule situation was just
Yeah.
not a
I think
part of
that's
the daily life.
I think that's why we're a lot of them are diabetic. From eating on breakfast, lunch, dinner. All the stuff that's going on
Yeah.
today.
Not everybody needs breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I know people that benefit from eating one large meal a day,
Yeah.
or people who benefit from, I mean, I would be sick. I can only eat so much food at once.
Yeah.
Or some people who eat 5, 6 meals, small meals a day,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So not all of us, and that's why it's frustrating because we're just not meant to all eat the same, and it can change
Yeah.
for you what
Mm-hmm.
that looks like. I was a vegetarian for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and for a period of time that worked really well for me. Not everybody could be a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Their body type, what their needs are, it wouldn't work, or they don't have the resources to be a vegetarian in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
where they're actually getting what they need.
Yeah.
And then I came to a really big life change that was incredibly stressful, and I lost weight that I couldn't afford to lose.
Yeah.
And I went back to eating. I started with my traditional meats
Yeah.
first, and I went back to eating meat again.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, sometimes, those shifts in our life happen, and our body, we need to get in touch with that connection that I was talking about between our gut and our brain, and acknowledging what it needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because it seemed like a lot of things, food wise, I remember I used to tell some of my friends that, like, even in Pomo country, we ate at midnight. They served
Mm-hmm.
everybody at midnight, and it was like, wow, why at midnight? Well, I don't know. It's just always been midnight. We never had a time, I guess. So up there in Northern California, they served everybody at midnight. So
Yeah.
that was our food at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just a lot of different ways we eat today, but
Well, and it also depends on like if you're going to be active. Like,
yeah.
if you're going to eat and go to bed, it's probably not going to sit very well,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right? Because it's just going to sit there.
Yeah.
But if it's beneficial to eat your calories when you're going to be the most active, right?
Yeah.
During the day, so that when you go to bed, you're not going to sleep well if
Yeah.
if you're working really hard to digest food.
Yeah, and then like I said, that midnight there was dancing going on all night.
Exactly. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes total
midnight.
sense,
Yeah, it does make
right?
sense.
Yeah, because and it was giving you fuel
Yeah.
to continue those dances and those ceremonies all night.
What traditional food you guys have up there that your tribe eat a lot right now?
Well, I don't live on my ancestral lands.
Yeah.
I live in Spokane,
Yes.
Washington. So I'm on the ancestral lands of the Kalispel, Coeur d'Alene,
Mm-hmm.
Spokane, and Colville Confederated tribes.
Yeah.
But I could tell you either one. I mean, what we eat here and then what we
Yeah.
eat like in Yurok country and stuff, ancestral foods. I just came back from the salmon ceremony
Okay.
of my people, and we're in Klamath, California, along the
Yeah.
Klamath River. And obviously salmon,
Oh yes.
eel. Um, there's lots of seaweed, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
Acorns, pine nuts are pretty significant,
Yeah.
traditional foods, I would say. And then lots of berries, obviously, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then over here, I do a lot of root digging and stuff over in this area.
Yeah.
Um, and so I work a lot with camas. It's from the lily family. It's like a bulb, and you gather it usually towards end of spring, summertime. It becomes the rains go away for a while, it becomes really difficult to be able to find it
Okay.
because you identify it by the plant that's above.
Mm-hmm.
And so once the rain stops for a significant period of time, it just becomes real difficult.
Yeah.
And I really love eating that one raw, dried, or I pound it down into a flour,
Yeah.
and then I make it into everything you could think of. Um, I really love working with traditional foods and
Mm-hmm.
then creating new things out of them and ways that I can share them with people
Yeah.
in a new way.
Okay.
Because sometimes you just really need them to go really far
Yeah.
so that like more people can experience them, right?
Yeah.
Because you only have
Right.
so much.
Yes.
So that's part of why I do it that way too, because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
then it just goes farther out, and people can try it in a different way, which is fun too. So
Yeah,
um
I like the way like I've told you before, I've been up in Hoopa, at basketball tournaments, and I know some people who are Yurok, and when you have the salmon from there, like the way it's cooked and prepared,
mhm.
I can't have it anywhere else. I mean, if I have it anywhere like here in Arizona or salmon, or I can't. It doesn't taste as good as it does up there the way it's cooked, on the fire.
Oh yeah, and like the
Yeah,
cedar planks and
yeah,
stuff around the fire.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just things like that.
it is, right. It's like
Right,
that whole process to it. It's like that cedar, right? That's
right.
being in a way infused into the meat that's
Yeah.
coming from that area,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a slow cook.
Yeah.
It does. It just I brought back some canned salmon
Mm-hmm.
from there, and I haven't opened it yet because I just
Oh yeah.
really want to savor it and use it for a
Yeah.
special occasion. So I'm like holding on to it like it's my precious, or because it is to me,
Yeah.
actually. I mean, traditional foods for me are very much, it's medicine,
Yeah. Yeah. Because
and I
everything.
usually only eat them for specific things. I wait for a special occasion.
And that's what I'm saying. Like even like when like salmon up there, I've seen it done, and down here deer. I mean, you pray for it and do things for it before you cook it and eat it. So that's something
Yeah.
that I like. Instead of having salmon at Red Lobster, I know up there that
Yeah.
salmon's been prayed for. I know, who, there's cedar in it, and it tastes really good.
Totally. And I mean, I just know too much,
Yeah,
unfortunately, sometimes about these different things like fish, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Different factory farm fish now, because
yeah,
that's a thing too,
yeah.
So it's like I know too much.
Mhm,
I know, how those fish are treated and handled and the quality
mhm,
that's lacking from those fish that are fed into to get sold into communities into people.
mhm.
And so just knowing all that stuff makes it more difficult,
Yeah.
for me to want to contribute to that industry.
How do you like the? I mean, I've tried the eel up there. My
Hmm.
friend Big Al from Yurok used to make it. Do you like
Hmm.
eel? I mean, I tried it. I mean, I tried to like it, but it's something that I really couldn't get used to the eel.
Yeah, I've only had it, once, and it
Yeah.
was all right. I mean, it's not my go-to.
Yeah.
I also brought back some sturgeon,
Okay.
which was pretty good. And we have sturgeon down here as well.
Yeah.
And I liked it too, but it wasn't quite
Mhm.
this, I prefer salmon for
Yeah.
sure. They neither one, I don't know. And the sturgeon I had was smoked, so that might be a lot different than obviously eating it.
How do you like the seaweed?
Oh, I'm obsessed with seaweed.
How do you guys
I'm
prepare
the
the seaweed
seaweed
over there?
monster. My grandma used to just pull it out of the ocean and dry it when I was a
Yeah.
kid in these huge like seaweed
Yeah.
patties.
Mhm.
And it's not like the pretty packaged seaweed you eat now,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
used to eat this bulky seaweed. I love seaweed. It also really helps if you've got that salt inkling.
Yeah.
It's a good way to help with that
Wh-
salt, and there's iron in seaweed as well. So, but yeah, I love
when I
seaweed.
was young,
I could never eat enough seaweed.
when I was a kid, we used to go because my Pomo culture they eat seaweed, so we would go out there and camp out there at night, and
Hmm.
then get it in the morning. So that was really fun. But yeah, the seaweed we the I know most of the time I see seaweed with tortilla, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
wrapped in burrito, and so
Yeah.
that's the only way I could probably eat seaweed. I don't
Yeah,
think.
I'll eat it pretty much any way you make it. Doesn't really matter. I'm not picky
Yeah.
about seaweed and how it's cultivated, and just like whatever, I'll eat it in all different flavors and forms. And
Hmm.
seaweed salad, I love a seaweed salad.
Okay. Yeah, I've never had any other seaweed but in a tortilla, I think.
Yeah, it's delicious. And also I feel like it's just nice. It helps with digestion for some reason. I've
Hmm.
always found that with seaweed as well. I'm not sure why, or if that's just with me, but
Yeah.
it seems to help with digestion too. So, but yeah, I tell people if you're wanting a salt, crunchy alternative, seaweed might be a good choice.
Do you have any wild tobacco up there or anywhere up there?
Wild,
Yeah.
I have never come upon wild.
Okay.
I grow my own tobacco.
Mhm.
But I just grow it, in my home.
Mhm.
But I've never seen it when I've been
Okay.
anywhere I've been.
Now, what do you do
But
with your
that doesn't mean
tobacco?
it's not here.
What do you do with your tobacco? You.
My tobacco, basically, well, I process it and I,
Mhm.
I hold on to it and I gift it or use it just for ceremonial purposes.
Okay.
It got pretty, unfortunately, like when I had the best um, crop ever, the snow came too soon. And when I was gone out of town, and it ruined it because you have to wait till it turns yellow
Yeah.
to harvest it. And the whole plant wasn't yellow yet. So it
Mhm.
wasn't ready. And so it killed the majority of my plants while I was gone. But I just really love being able to use it or gift it to
Mhm.
people,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, we used to. I mean, a lot. I think even the Apaches and the Pomos used to, smoke tobacco, but I don't think today
yeah,
it's
I
not
have
as.
I have not chose to smoke it
Yeah.
yet. I could, but um I haven't chosen to smoke. I don't smoke anything, so I just haven't. I'm just like, oh, I mean if it feels right at some point maybe, but Yeah, that's not how I've been using it. So, and then I've saved some tobacco flowers. I know sometimes you can make some essence and different things with stuff like that, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I've thought about, using that in some kind of salve or something,
Yeah.
or making a soap or something like that. But
Is there any roots that you use right now, like for medicine or anything like that?
any roots? Well,
Yeah,
I
or
mean,
plants.
obviously, let's see. Well, bitter root. So I don't know that it grows over there in Cal. I wouldn't have known if it was in California, but that one's in the spring and it's got these beautiful bright pink flowers, but you don't want to gather it once they've bloomed.
Okay.
So you want to gather it before they're open.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's got this really bright orange peel on it that you want to get the peel completely off. And then under it
Mm-hmm.
are these white shoots, and they're super long and skinny and delicate. And
Yeah.
it's incredibly bitter. It's why it's called bitter root. And it tastes like aspirin, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's meant for pain.
Okay.
Um, and so I feel like that helps you remember because it tastes like aspirin. So it helps with like, if you're having some type of physical
Yeah.
pain in the body, or you could use it topically. So that's something I use quite a bit. And
Mm-hmm.
we have bear root down here. I know that I got
Yeah.
gifted the biggest bear root plant I've ever seen in my life when I came down just recently. So that made me really excited.
Oh wow.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we use bear root. I think it's amazing for digestive stuff. It's really calming for digestive,
Yeah.
and then it also helps with your throat. You can chew on bear root,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll help numb your throat and numb your gums.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's one that I use actually quite a bit.
We have
Um,
angelico root. Is that the same as bear root that they
what
use?
is it?
Angelico root. It it,
Nope, Angelica root's different.
it smells the same, right? It just
I don't know.
because
I don't know that it does smell the
we
same.
have
I
bear
don't
root
think
down.
so.
We have
I'd
bear
have to
root
look
down
that
here.
into that one.
We have bear root down here in Arizona,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
oh yeah.
in
I've
California.
gotten bear root from a contact I have down there. We
Oh,
trade
oh,
plant
okay.
medicines.
But in California, we use the angelica root, and we use that for the singers would bite on the root and chew on
Oh,
it for their
interesting.
voices, because
Yeah,
they're singing all night,
maybe that
so
is another one. I'm just not familiar with that name for it.
well they call it
Um,
Baco in Pomo, it's Baco,
okay.
so
Yeah.
it's
I
almost the
think
same.
I don't know the Yurok word for it. And Karuk, it's Kishwoof, but I don't remember the Yurok word for it because it was a Karuk man that gave it to me.
Oh, okay.
He told me that.
Oh, all right.
So
Yeah, it seems like a
we
lot
call
of.
it Husk Husk.
Oh, really?
The Spokane tribe over here calls it Husk Husk.
Huskas. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
I've been sleeping with it actually by my bed because it's so beautiful. I don't want to like use any of it. It's huge. It's
Yeah.
like as big as my head. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time wanting to mess with it because it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Now, do you like? Have you tried like the acorn? We pick it here. They make acorn dumplings or acorn soup, and then
I've had
um,
the acorn mush.
yeah, acorn
And
mush is in
then when
California.
I came down, I bought some acorn flour and then I made different things with it when I came home. I made muffins, I made crepes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've had the mush, like the traditional
Yeah.
mush down there, and
Yeah.
it was really good.
I like it in California. In the Pomo, we have the mush. I mean, it's okay. I'll eat it, but I like the way the acorn is made down here by my mom's tribe, my other tribe, Apaches.
Hmm.
So they make the acorn differently. So I guess just the way people make it, the tribes, maybe the water, or I don't know, I'm not sure, but yeah, I like the taste better down here than up there.
Yeah,
So
and I've heard the key is also like how long you what is it called? How long you leach it for or whatever. Like you have to like soak the bitterness out of it. And if you don't do it for a long enough period of time, then it's really going to affect the flavor.
okay,
And so that also might contribute to you liking one more than the other, too. I don't know. It's possible.
so doing all this food for medicine and all these roots, how did you get into the author as a with books?
it just kind of was an, I don't know. I mean, I think being a public speaker, because that's been a big part of the work that I do, even just with my health coaching,
Mm-hmm.
is also is just another way of staying in a way storyteller, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And because I was telling a lot of my story growing up and dealing with certain physical ailments and not getting help, and then,
Yeah.
my journey through reconnecting with traditional foods and using plant medicine to
Yeah.
help myself heal. And so I just kind of came to this place where, I had told some of my story quite often. And um, I just thought, hey, if it can help people, then why not? And why not write a book? And I really have always loved to journal,
Mm-hmm.
and been into writing, but it wasn't something that I shared with folks. Um, and it became, my first book was a memoir. So that was my most hefty book, emotionally and physically.
Okay.
They say it's like 10 years of therapy to write a memoir, because you really have to relive all of it
Okay.
to be able to share it. So that's kind of what got me into it. But then, and when I had my daughter, I wanted to create some representation for our Indigenous folks that I wasn't seeing. And so I've authored a couple children's books.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how that started. And then I also love writing poetry. So I have a book of poetry. Um, and I wanted to just, express
Yeah.
what it's like to walk this walk as an urban native,
Yeah.
in today's world. And so that just became another outlet. So
Okay. That
yeah.
sounds good. And then you went into the health you do yoga too?
Well, yeah, I was certified. I got certified to teach yoga like 9 years ago, and I
Mm-hmm.
did teach yoga for a number of years. I'm not really teaching adults. Once COVID started, I stopped teaching adults,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't chosen to get back to it. I'm also certified to teach kids.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm working in the public school system, one of my books is called Creature Teacher Yoga, and it has animals doing the poses, and then it has Salish translations to the names of the poses. And so I'll go into like elementary schools and I'll teach kids yoga,
Okay.
using the Creature Teacher Yoga book. But as far as like classes, I just don't really have the time commitment
Mm-hmm.
to want to do it on a consistent basis.
Okay.
So yeah.
Oh, that sounds like I mean you do a lot of stuff here. Teaching.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
a lot of different things. I got some different talks coming up, which I'm looking forward to, on some different things I haven't really got to talk a whole lot about.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm enjoying creating some new content,
Yeah.
and reaching some different folks. That it's very, I do a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion work
Mm-hmm.
too. So I really enjoy sharing my culture and my just lived experience, and just raising awareness about certain things and acknowledging certain things,
Yeah.
and kind of helping facilitate and support people through that work,
Mm-hmm.
is something that I
When
really enjoy as well. So, and that's very different from the health coaching.
when you teach out, your class, or do you get any like challenged or any kind of question you what you're teaching or anything like that?
When I'm teaching what?
When you're teaching,
Yoga?
yeah, no, when you're teaching like health and your classes about culture and things like that,
Hmm.
like even your food for medicine, do you get any kind of pushback from that or questions about what you're teaching?
Um, I get questions. I don't really get a lot of pushback. I mean, I really try to go in there with a humble spirit,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm forever a student,
Yeah.
and I try not to talk about specific foods or practices that I are not of my ancestry, or
Okay.
what I mean, that I
Yeah.
don't have permission to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
or I haven't had any lived experience with, so
Yeah.
I try to really go in with that, and being sensitive,
Yeah.
um, about how I'm approaching certain topics, the words that I'm using, and how some of those words might be triggering for people depending
Yeah.
on what their relationship is to this work. Because I don't want to like food shame people, right?
Right.
Or somehow misrepresent
Mm-hmm.
um, a food or a tribe or something like that. So
Yeah.
I'm very intentional when I'm presenting um, for folks, and so I've been lucky. The only pushback I get is from non-indigenous people.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah, so I've gotten pushback there, of course,
Hmm.
um, for all kinds of different
Oh
reasons.
yeah.
But their pushback doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
So, you know, and if I did, I would try to learn from it. I would
Mm-hmm.
want to meet with that person aside from the group
Yeah.
and find out what it is that triggered them or bothered them,
Yeah.
offended them, and how can I do better.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why I have been lucky enough to not get a whole lot. I think if you come in with that, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean, with that
Yeah.
humble spirit of, that you're still learning and you're just sharing it, what you've experienced and what but there's room to grow. I think most people are
Yeah.
um pretty open and pretty forgiving
Yeah.
if you maybe said something that they didn't that they didn't resonate with them,
Yeah.
maybe.
I don't know of anybody. I mean, if um, on social media, I've seen you before. You have a lot of tattoos. And to me they look great. Do you get anything from? Because I know a lot of people. They have the three on their lines on their chin, and they'll get
Hmm.
kind of like some people will talk about the tattoos on their chin. Do you get any pushback from the tattoos or anything like that?
Yeah, and the three lines are actually traditional to my
Yes.
Yurok tribe.
Yeah.
So that is a tattoo that the women get to represent the mind,
Yes.
body, spirit. Um, and I've been asked about that tattoo quite a
Mm.
bit, and some people have even said that I have that tattoo, and I'm like, I think I would know if my chin was tattooed. Um, and I explained that to me that's a very
Mm-hmm.
um, that's a very important and cultural
Yeah.
significance to that tattoo. And for me personally, I will not get that tattoo unless I am told,
Yeah.
to. So for me, I'm waiting for that. I have a really strong connection to my dream medicine and my ancestors. And I
Mm-hmm.
know if that's something I'm supposed to get, they're going to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with it if that's never the case,
Yeah.
because I do see a lot of um, a popularity growing around it, which I think
Yeah.
it's beautiful when it
Yes.
comes from a good place,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's beautiful that people are expressing themselves that way. But I would hate for someone to think that I was doing it to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's a trend or something like that.
Okay.
Um, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
I
it
think
does.
that I do get some of that pushback even now because it's like I've been heavily tattooed for a
Yeah.
long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've been heavily tattooed for probably about 20 years or
Oh,
something.
really?
So I get a ton of pushback. I mean, it's either one or the other. It's people either really like them and they want to tell me, or they really don't like them and want to tell me.
Okay.
So it goes both ways. It draws negative and positive attention.
Yeah.
The way that I handle it is different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I used to use it as like body armor,
Yeah.
and it would repel people and keep people away, which is kind of what I wanted
Yeah.
for a period of time. And then, but it also can attract the wrong people
Mm-hmm.
too, which sometimes is, definitely not good. But for the most part, it's pretty positive, I
Yeah.
would say. Um, but of course, there's always going to be people that have something to say about it
Yeah.
and, you know,
Yeah.
like to make their comments and whatnot. So,
Is there
but
a
I
certain
mean,
is there a certain
you
impression
can't
that
look
people
like
get?
me and be someone who's really reactive, or you're going to just exhaust yourself.
Is there like impression people get about you that's incorrect when they first see you or anything like that?
I mean, they obviously, so I mean, I get all kinds of stereotypes
Mm-hmm.
with having, being heavily tattooed,
Yeah.
that I'm, a drug, I use drugs and ride
Yeah.
motorcycles and in gang, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or I'm promiscuous, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Just all kinds of negative
Mm-hmm.
stereotypes. And some of those things aren't negative.
Yeah.
But like just these perceived things,
Mm-hmm.
um, because of them. But I think that's all the more reason to show them when they come at me, because
Yeah.
they come at me as keyboard
Mm-hmm.
warriors, right?
Mm-hmm.
On social media. They're never to my face,
Yeah.
really. Or mostly,
Well,
hiding
besides
behind a keyboard.
besides the
It's I just look
tattoos,
at it as a test,
yeah. But like besides the
and it's
tattoos,
easy.
besides tattoos, you coming in, like the impression that people get about you coming in teaching them about gut health. I mean, is there any kind of wrong impression they get about that or anything?
I don't know. I guess I'd have to ask
Yeah.
them.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had anybody at least stopping to my face.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I'm really intentional and careful about
Mm-hmm.
the words that I use. I
Yeah.
don't want anybody to feel ashamed
Mm-hmm.
for where they're at with their journey with health.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I want.
Yeah.
I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel comfortable sharing with me what's going on with them, however much they want to share, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever that is. And so I actually in my talks offer a bit of my own vulnerability,
Yeah.
and that sets the stage and the foundation for people to
Mm-hmm.
feel that I'm sincere and a safe person
Yeah.
to like trust or listen to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that I think that's probably the thing I'm actually getting ready to do a talk for health coaching for health coaches for the
Mm-hmm.
Latino community. I'm doing that in 2 days.
Oh, cool.
So that's like one of the things I'm talking to them about working with clients,
Yeah.
is that while being professional, you still have to offer some sense of vulnerability, and letting people know that, the reason I'm here is because I went through this too.
Yeah.
And I understand and acknowledge, some of these things that you might be dealing with. And I'm here to support,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And I think that that's really, you have to be relatable.
Yeah.
Because, I might come in because, I'm a small framed person, and
Yeah.
they might look at me and be like, she's never had to worry about, this or that.
Yes.
Or she thinks she's better than me,
Mm-hmm. I,
and some of those things are their own stuff and I can't help that.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I come in with a humble heart and vulnerability and just be sincere and genuine,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like most people are going to,
Yeah.
be okay
And
with it,
it's
from there. So
it seems like a lot of like health coaches that I know are native. Something happened to them. That's why they are doing what they're doing today. Like like my friend Robert, he said he almost died from diabetes. And then he changed his whole, and now he does
yeah,
all this. It seems like that's kind of the trend to me. Like you were saying, what happened to you when you were younger, and then you changed the way you ate, and it seems like a lot of the Native American, health coaches, that's what something had happened to them when they were younger.
yeah, those make the best coaches,
Yeah.
right? Are the
Mm-hmm.
people that, in my opinion, people who have relatable lived experience are going to have more empathy
Yeah.
for that person. It's hard when you don't have any lived experience, to
Mm-hmm.
empathize with somebody.
Yeah.
It's just, it's building that foundation is so important, in that trust, because we're all about relationships as Native people.
Yeah.
And so I just think that vulnerability piece is just humbling yourself and being vulnerable, and,
Mm-hmm.
setting that as the first step.
Mm-hmm.
I just think people really receive it really well,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm. You think we're gonna finally get to that point where we're gonna start eating healthier? I mean, like I said before, I go to ceremonies, California, Arizona. We eat good, but we could eat better, and that's something that we would like to get to, but I don't know how long that's gonna take.
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on the community. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be all at once, right?
Right.
Because certain tribes have more resources than others.
Yeah.
So I think that we are going and headed in that direction. I think that our youth are incredibly resilient and strong, and, just they're warriors, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I see so many young people doing such incredible things
Mm-hmm.
already, and they're about prevention, right?
Yeah.
So if we can make that significant difference with our youth with education and resources,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to grow into our adulthood, and that's going to become the protocol for ceremonies,
Yeah.
that it's just healthy food, or traditional food or whatever. But it's going to take individuals stepping up
Mm-hmm.
and doing the extra work, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
in the beginning to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, that's the thing
but
that we're fighting for. Like with this podcast, we're fighting for Oak Flat here in Arizona, which Oak Flat carries all the acorn. Those big acorn trees
mhm,
that we have up there that for generations our people has been picking, and using to eat. So, I mean, like just things like that we're dealing with, with the mining and stuff like that, polluting water and in the roots and all the things that we pick. It just seems like we're always on the trying to protect those things from industries.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, because it's also about, right, like you want to share that information, but at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, you don't want it to be exploited
Yeah.
for Western society to profit off of it.
Yeah.
And then we have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the dangers of like superfoods, right? When the whole superfood craze went, and specific, indigenous communities from over the world, their specific, traditional foods and things were completely being exploited,
Yes.
and they didn't, weren't having access to them like
Mm-hmm.
they used to be. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, some stuff you have to be really mindful, and also sharing within those communities. Because when I talk to people, it's sometimes across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to think about that and, understand or give examples of,
Yeah.
okay, well, that you might not have this specific thing, but,
Mm-hmm.
here's an alternative for the region that you're in.
Yeah.
So you have to think about those things too,
Oh, cool.
and how it can apply. I
Yeah.
do the same thing with like smudging, right? Because
Right.
like certain people will want to like smudge and they'll ask me questions about it, and I'll be like, and they're non-native, and so I'll talk to them about how white sage is over harvested,
Yeah.
right? And there's a shortage of
Yeah.
white sage, and maybe they could use these alternatives instead,
Yeah.
of using our sacred medicines.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some other plants,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's always something for me when people want to like smudge, and my first question is, where did you get the sage at?
Yeah, me too.
That's one of my first questions to ask. If it's from a certain, if it's from Amazon, then okay, I don't want to smudge, but if you got it from your own garden or you got it from a
Yeah,
certain mountain, then okay, I'll do it. But yeah, that's one of my first questions is where'd you
me
get it
too.
at?
Yeah. And I get asked that a lot.
Yeah,
So I'm just like, how about you use this instead?
yeah,
And yeah, knowing where you got the medicine from is part of the whole point.
mm-hmm.
So, um, that's so important. So yeah, I only work with medicines that I grow or get from the person, I know the
Yeah,
people
yeah,
I get them from,
and
because I'm not contributing to
that's
that
what I
other
used to
stuff.
talk to
So,
my uncle about too, was like like even the word medicine man, like
hmm,
that was because they were using if you had a snake bite or you broke your arm or you had you were sick, they had medicines for that, or they put root
yeah,
on you, or they take out the poison and things like that. That was a medicine man, but today, because of the medicines they have out today over the counter, most
hmm,
times these the medicine men, they use to sing in ceremonies now, but before
yeah,
they used to use all this root and everything to cure you.
yeah,
So that's things
it's
that's
true.
changed. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Donnell. Well, thanks for taking the time out to give me a call and talk over what's going on with the food and
Uh-huh.
health. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. I'll put you down. When I get out the link, I'll make sure I get your all the links down on the podcast so everyone can see, and your email and stuff like that too. So,
All right.
all right,
Sounds
Donnell.
good.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
All
Take
right.
care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was good. She has a lot of good resources out there if you want to check it out. She's on Amazon. I'll put all the links on there. She does great work for her community, and she does all the gut health and mental. So you guys please check her out, and thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you on the next episode. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.